Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 634 on Tuesday, the 3rd of June, 2025. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week you'll hear Like the North, We Never Forget. In new car news, you'll listen to the sound of inevitability. And in points of interest, you'll find that while some cars may be small, some are also mighty. But first, we have actually quite a bit of follow-up this week after our moaning last week, or my moaning.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start with the old friend that is Dieselgate. And after being initially charged in 2019, 4 of 5 ex-senior managers at Volkswagen Group have now been found guilty and sentenced for the fraud over the diesel test scandal. 2 of the executives have been sentenced to actual prison time. 2 have received suspended sentences. The final and 5th executive who has not been actually sentenced or found guilty yet is former chief executive Martin Winterkorn, who has actually had a number of health issues, which has meant that he has not made it to court. I can't believe 2019 to 2025. I mean, I know there was COVID, but still.
It has been quite a complex case.
Yes.
I think that's understating it quite significantly, but yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's a case of trying to find root causes of blame and all these kind of things.
I think fighting past it was rogue engineers probably took up some time.
I would say so. It's just like, right, how rogue given you asked them to, etc., 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 or told them to, as the case may be.
Yeah. It's good to see some justices being done, though. Anyway, Alan, do you want to take us on to France, where your name is now sung in front of the national anthem? You will be opening supermarkets as an honoured guest, and they will be erecting statues in your name and in your honour, thanks to what you've done for France.
Plus, Alan Bradley is coming along now that we've had Joan of Arc, Charles de Gaulle, Alan Bradley. MPs have voted to end France's ZFE low-emission zones, despite opposition from the government. As we talked about before, this is all part of a broader economic simplification bill, which was adopted last Wednesday night by 98 votes to 51. The government had attempted to put itself up in opposition, which was trying to find a compromise, applying the ZEVs to only Paris and Lyon. It was rejected, and that means that there is currently going to be a blanket scrapping of all the low-emission zones nationwide. As we said, this is all part of that bill about simplifying daily and economic life in France, just trying to get rid of some of those things which just annoy you, which cost money, which are difficult. I've been caught up in that, partly through the complexity of the whole critère scheme, because it is complex, and all the gradated views. And I'm sure that on paper it looks incredibly fair and it's well thought through and wonderfully academic. But that's a very French way of thinking where, yes, all the talking heads say that this is the way to do it. This is the fairest way, but then actually in real life and implementation stuff becomes unusable. As people say, there's a quote here in the Connexion article that's been linked, quote from the MP Quentin Le Four, saying, "It's a very bad solution to a real problem. It's the most unjust measure there is, one that risks turning working class people against environmentalism." And I think that's what they're worried about. And someone else from the Green Party, the Ecologiste, are saying that ZFE are an unfinished tool, adding that without adequate support measures like scrappy schemes, part ride options, or better public transport, the rollout has created resentment. And that's kind of how it got included in the bill. You need all the background, you need the whole system and all the other sort of be able to deliver all the other background capabilities to actually then be able to have these clean air zones. And we've seen ourselves here in the UK where that just hasn't happened. Hello, Bristol.
Yes. How much did you spend to free the French nation from the tyranny of all this administration?
I bought 2 Critère stickers. I think it came in at about €9, €10 in total, but I did it, and then the next day this was announced. It's one of those
as predicted
things. I thought, I've had registration plate numbers, I shall just do it.
Nostradamus Bradley.
Yeah. I'm going to blame some. I think it was Calvin Andrew before that, and there's some comment elsewhere.
Okay.
There was a knock-on effect that meant that I saved France.
Right, I am going to take us to the final piece of follow-up, and this is the news that...
Oh, I should also say I invested in Minidisc and all sorts of other stuff like that too, so this is not a new thing.
We'll let you know how to get in touch with Alan later on in the show if you need to find out what not to do next. Right, I am taking us to the final piece of follow-up, and this is the news that Antonio Filosa has been named as the new Stellantis CEO, as the Autocar article linked says. He is replacing Carlos Tavares, who was kicked out of the firm late last year, as we all know, and he will, following what is expected to be a shareholder meeting that just ratifies this, he will be in charge from the 23rd of June. On top of this, the Stellantis chairman, John Elkann, has said that he will be naming a new leadership team for the 14 brands under Stellantis umbrella next month. We did discuss this before because I was worried that they're going to name new people after just naming new people to head up the 14 brands.
I'm hoping that that's not going to happen. I would hope that the current heads of the different brands were put in place with Elkann's assent and consultation. So I'm hoping that really this new leadership team is really going to be the leadership team you already have, plus some gaps filled in, including, of course, the job that Antonio Filosa has just come from.
Yeah.
It's not a big surprise, really, that it's either a French or an Italian. I think anyone outside of those two nationalities had very, very little chance of becoming CEO of Stellantis. That's just the way French and Italian companies and people are.
Maybe with an Italian CEO, there might be a better relationship with the Italian government. Just a thought, potentially.
That's not necessarily a given because the Italian government is a little bit like the American government in many ways. Hence the whole flag and naming thing.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's wonderfully popular with Italian business.
That's the last bit of follow-up, and that means we go into new news, Alan.
Yeah, new news. Whilst we do normally cover the new car registration figures, we don't normally cover the new vehicle manufacturing figures that the SMMT also releases, because we figure there's a limited amount of listening to me going through lists that you're actually interested in listening to, and frankly, there's a limited amount of me listening to lists that I'm interested in listening to. But UK production of new cars and vans fell to its lowest level since 1952 in April, according to the SMMT. 59,203 cars and commercial vehicles left factories last month. The only time that it's been lower was the very exceptional year of 2020, where just 197 vehicles were constructed, and that doesn't really count.
No.
The car production percentage of that dropped 8.6% compared to April last year. It's 56,534. Production for export markets was hit very hard, down 10% to 42,972, compared to 3.3% drop for the home market. Now, in case you're interested, 13,562 British-built vehicles were produced, sold/registered. It must be registered in April last year. And I think the stuff like the Qashqai and the Duke is going to make up a fair percentage of that. Plus, of course, some Land Rover products.
Mini.
Possibly, yes. Minis that aren't EVs.
Toyota.
And, Yeah, okay, Corollas.
But on top of that, SMMT is saying that the later timing of Easter reduced the number of working days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On top of the reduced demand from abroad. And let's not forget, of course...
By reduced demand from abroad, you're really sort of trying not to say nobody knows what the heck's going on with America, so nobody's exporting to America. Because it might be one price when it leaves the UK, and 2 weeks later it might be 40% more expensive.
Moving on, though, we do have some good news, talking of Toyota, some good production news, and it is official that the GR Corolla will be built at the Derbyshire plant. This is to increase capacity because the Japanese plant is absolutely full to burst on the number of vehicles they can make, apparently. This decision was, again, I'm going to say apparently, but we can only go on what we are told, apparently decided last year, and nothing at all to do with any deal that has or has not been made with America. I jokingly asked that question, but I don't think they would have moved this quickly or been able to move this quickly.
No, that's true. They might have moved to entire... Well, yeah, they might have moved to just bringing the engines into the US and being able to build them there. I think the Corolla's built in the US. If it's not, it might be in Mexico. But I think of all the locations where they could build, I think the UK currently, as far as I'm aware, at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, the 3rd of June, 2025, in the UK, could have the lowest set of tariffs. It's much harder to be racist towards us, I think, than it is to be racist towards people in
anywhere else.
Yes, exactly. Which is pathetic, and I think it's horrible. It's awful that I felt obliged to say that. But there you go. There's the current American administration, everyone. I shall now move on from politics.
It is tied up, before you get to the point, it is tied up to politics because this has the potential to add 10,000 vehicles to production, and the US is a big buyer of the GR Corolla. Like, we don't get it here, so, they are a massive market. And the real problem is that if you add 10,000 suddenly being exported from the UK, that takes a big chunk out of the 100,000 that have been approved at only 10% with the New Deal. Well, the outline of the discussions of a New Deal that they are going to have. We don't have the New Deal yet, but one of the things that was said was there will be a limit of 100,000, and up to that 100,000 vehicles exported out of the UK into the US, it will be only a 10% tariff. But over 100,000, who knows what it'll be? And I bet that makes JLR go, can we renegotiate this, please?
Yeah, I think they'll be pushing for a bit more of that.
I would imagine JLR are very much the ones who really want as much capacity as possible in the US.
Agreed.
Alan, there is one last bit that you do need to highlight with regards to this Autocar article.
Yes, hang on, just whilst I take a quick drink. This Autocar article says that GR Corollas will be the first GR car built outside of Japan, forgetting, of course, that the Yaris GRMN, which is even higher than the GR, was actually built in Valenciennes in the north of France, which, as far as I'm aware, having been to Valenciennes, is not in Japan. There we go.
Anyway, now, do you want to take us on to some really, actually quite grim news at Volvo?
It is, yes. Volvo has confirmed 3,000 job cuts, part of our £1.4 billion savings drive. Just over 2,000 of those are going to be in the offices in Gothenburg in Sweden, with a few more elsewhere. They're saying that the restructuring will cost approximately £116 million, which will, of course, be shown in the financial results. This is them getting rid of... it's not even getting rid of it. This is them implementing a massive cost-cutting initiative. It's 15% of its global office-based workforce is being cut. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that, where the roles move to, how they manage to not have 15% of their workforce.
Yeah, I'm very curious where those cuts are coming from. With that many, that must be across all departments. But it's how deep it is in all the departments. I mean, things you don't want to hear that there's less people working in is like software, engineering, safety and all that sort of. Those are not areas you want there to be less. Maybe there's always room in all large companies to be more efficient, to work smarter, etc. I'm not suggesting that. That worries me. It worries me a lot.
Well,
that's such a big hit in such a small place.
Yeah, I'm bad for Gothenburg as well as a city. Does make me wonder how many, all the sort of finance and all that stuff, if they're offshoring that, if they're whatever. I mean, the thing with all these is it makes great headlines. They get rid of people and then they hire them back again as contractors. That's a traditional cycle that takes place.
It'll please the shareholders, which is what a lot of all these things are done for, is for the shareholder. It's not for the it's not for the company, and it's not for the end user.
Yes, I might be a little aware of that at the moment, and it's a bit of a sore point.
I know. Right, well, in that case, I shall move us on to VAUXHAll. And VAUXHAll, it was announced just yesterday, so this is quite hot off the press, as they say. VAUXHAll have announced a new managing director, as Steve Catlin will return to the company where he started more than 20 years ago. In the meantime, he has worked at Audi, Seat, the Volkswagen Group, and will be moving from Volvo Car Financial Services in the UK. Good luck to him. He does seem to have some cars that seem to be quite good now.
We played with a Grandland.
Yes.
At SMMT, the pair of us. The new Grandland, not the older one. And it's an impressive vehicle.
I mean, we were in, 10 minutes, but yet.
Yeah, a bit more, but yeah. But it's I don't know. My argument is that the biggest problem Vauxhall has in the UK is being called Vauxhall.
I think so. I think if it didn't have that badge on, people's expectations going in would be totally different.
Yeah, or they would actually just go in and, not have an expectation. I think the
that's what I mean.
Is the problem.
That's what I mean.
But yeah, good luck to him. Good luck to him, because there's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, EV chargers. Government is dropping. Now, this has been a very generic kind of statement that doesn't really have much depth to it. But essentially, the government has announced that it's dropping EV charger planning permission rules.
Now, that could mean it's dropping all planning permission, or it's dropping some of the rules around planning permission.
There's a link in the show notes to an article on EV Powered by Matt Allen. And it says the Future of Roads Minister Lillian Greenwood confirmed that from May the 29th, homeowners and businesses will no longer need to submit a planning application to install public or private EV sockets. She said that by cutting red tape, the government hoped to speed up the rollout of chargers around the UK and ensure it hit its target of having 300,000 devices installed by 2030. It's all about cutting red tape.
That's quite specific wording, isn't it?
It is.
Sockets.
Yes. So homeowners, businesses, private EV sockets. I have a funny feeling that this is going to be the more I read into this, the more I think, this is going to be ones where they're mounted on a wall, mounted on a building. So if you needed, any of those Tesla destination style chargers as a public version. And I'm sure that whenever we go into this in more detail, then it won't be as simple as no planning permission. You're still going to need planning permission to put them at a motorway service station.
Yeah.
To put banks and banks of 300. I have a funny feeling this is the sort of home style. That's one of the reasons why EV charging stations are rarely covered and sheltered from the rain is because it's a different piece of planning permission to get canopies over and stuff. And that's hard. It's much, much harder even, I think is better phrasing, to be able to add the canopy than to actually have the charging station. What we need is a few local politicians to go out and stand around in the rain trying to plug in an EV. But then all of a sudden, I think there'll be a change of attitude when it comes to canopies over EV chargers.
Right. I am going to take us on to the last piece of news in the first part of the show. And late last week, Porsche told dealers to, and I'm quoting here from a car dealer article that is linked in the show notes, to immediately remove a certain selection of electric Taycan models from sale. Now, these seem to be the ones built between 2019 and 2024. And this is off the back of a Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, DVSA, recall that was first issued back in the end of 2024.
Have they taken them off sale?
Yes. Well done, Alan. Oh, my word. The problem is it's not fully clear exactly what it's all connected with because there's just been this statement saying remove them without explanation. DVSA hasn't commented too much. Porsche UK or GB, has not commented much either. But the original recall was down to the potential, as the DVSA are quoted here saying, a short circuit within the battery modules during the vehicle's life service cannot be ruled out under certain circumstances, which could lead to thermal events and later to a fire in the vehicle, ending quote.
Thermal events.
Yes. Crikey. However, it was expected that a software update would come in and address this. However, having to make up a reason why at this point, it would appear that the software update has not come out as expected or in the time expected for the DVSA to say, no, you don't sell these.
Yeah.
However, the expectation is that this will happen by the end of the month. that the software update will be out, and therefore they can roll it out across the owners and also the Porsche GB service stations.
Mm-hmm. It seems that some of the latest Taycans are not really affected by this.
No.
That happy news takes us to Guilt Minute, a quick break in the show where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on and the hosting running. If you're at the Motoring Podcast with a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We also have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. If you don't have any spare cash, then we completely understand. Then you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. We can also just add in and remind you that you can also like and subscribe, but most importantly, subscribe on YouTube as well. That would be a great help. And many of you have done that since in the last month and since I last poked and reminded everyone. Do please do that. It's youtube.com/motoring podcast, I think. If you've done all of that, and some of you do, so thanks very much, then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. Right, Alan, we go into new car news, and do you want to take us to the latest brand that has inevitably moved to an SUV stroke crossover?
Yes, well, most of the UK's motoring journalists seem to spend a lot of last week in Dieppe in northern France, and they were there to see and try a number of new models from Alpine, but kind of key amongst them is the A390. The A390 is intended to be a competitor for the Porsche Macan Electric or the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, and it's going to be the third model for Alpine, the other two being the A110 Coupe, of course, and then the A290, which is definitely not a Renault 5. Sorry, definitely not in the semi. No, I'm kidding. It's the Renault 5 equivalent. Prices for the A390 are due to start from about £60,000 when orders open in November. It's 4.6 metres long, 1.5 metres tall, and has a 532-litre boot. Not something you can say for either of the other two models in the lineup. That makes it Tesla Model Y size, but more attractive.
Yes.
Very much heading for the performance SUV section with that price and with 464 brake horsepower on tap.
And they're also being clever about electric motors and stuff like that to make it feel more driver-focused as well.
Mm.
I mean, I was saying this to you before we started, that for me, this is the epitome of things that depress me about the current car design language across the industry. This is not specific to Alpine. Because of the move to EVs and how the vast majority are an SUV, we have got some really quite attractive designs that are ruined because there's an extra foot or so of metal up the sides to hide the batteries away.
He's dialed that back, by the way. Earlier on, it was 2 feet of metal up the side that he was complaining about.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to go through that argument again. I still think 2 foot's too much anyway, but yes. If you do hide a foot off the bottom of that, that is a really attractive four-door coupe.
And as I said, it wasn't even as much as that. But yes, one of the challenges with this kind of thing, though, is, of course, the volumes are not going to be enough for it to have a platform to itself. That, along with sort of customer expectations of range and all these kind of things, and by the way, it's with the 89 kilowatt-hour battery, the maximum WLTP range is about 342 miles. But because of the battery, because of all these kind of things, it has to be on an existing platform, and therefore there have to be compromises. I think it does a better job of being SUV from sports car company, mid-engine sports car company, let me phrase that very carefully, than anything from Lotus.
Yes.
Which is the nearest comparable brand.
To be fair, this is recognisable as an Alpine, for starters.
Yes, it's recognisable as an Alpine, and those dimensions don't mean that it's going to be like Godzilla hulking over a car park, which is what happens with the Electra.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to seeing this on the road. Right at the minute, the photos available in the Autocar article that we've got linked are heavily edited press photos. Let's wait until we see it on the road in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I suspect it will look better in real life than it does in photos.
I'm going to take us on to Genesis, and Genesis are bringing the titled Electrified G80, that is the name of it, the Electrified G80 to the UK this month, and it will come with a 323-mile maximum range, It is a bit bigger than the previous one, so therefore they can
It's
make
130 millimeters bigger. It's like, what's that? 10 inches? No, that's not 10 inches. That's man measuring. It really isn't. That's 4 inches.
But that's why they can bring it as a car as opposed to an SUV, because they, instead of going up, they've gone long.
Yeah.
Like I say, 323 miles. It's going to have all-wheel drive powertrain, dual motor, 365 brake horsepower with 516 pound of the foot torques. 0 to 60 in a really ridiculous 4.9 seconds. There's no point in that. It's going to be lovely to sit in. It's going to be, I mean, that's a perfect use of an electric car, is a limousine style thing.
Mm-hmm.
Prices they think are going to start around, or this Top Gear article thinks is going to start around £77,000. It's not for everyone.
But it has a built-in antibacterial sterilizer system in the front armrest.
Yeah, the Santa Fe had that as well.
Oh, right, okay.
But that has that in the glove box. That was a COVID thing.
Yes, yeah, I assumed that, yes.
Yeah.
The G80, the previous version, was relatively popular around me in Massachusetts. I used to see quite a few of them. A couple of electrified ones, but I saw quite a few. The more affluent areas of the US on the coasts, then they do seem to be making a mark.
Yes, and it's an interesting left field choice.
Yes, well, it's definitely more attractive than some of the German.
Absolutely. Do you want to take us to Fiat for something that perhaps should have been revealed yonks ago?
Well, this is still a concept, and it is the new Grande Panda 4x4, which is, of course, a Grande Panda that is 4x4. It also means it's jacked up a little bit. It also means it has some cladding, yay, added to it. And as it's being shown here, it's very nice dark burgundy paint, but with white steel-alike wheels. Very much harking back to the Panda Sicily and stuff, especially the sort of graphic strip along the side there, where instead of Sicily, as it said on the sort of 1980s and 1990s models, it just says Panda in big cutouts. This preview concept, whatever you're going to call it, also comes with the spare wheel mounted on the rack on the roof and with little sort of bonus LED driving lights. Very cute, very cool. The Grande Panda is currently offered with either 111 horsepower electric motor or 108 horsepower mild hybrid petrol engine. The big difference here is that, well, first of all, Fiat hasn't completely revealed what's powering the rear axle, other than saying it's an electrified, innovative rear axle. Thurl, so that's the Fiat Europe boss, Gaetano Thurl, said that Fiat engineers are still working on the potential four-wheel drive powertrain, refused to give details on whether any production 4x4 would be electric or combustion-based. Fiat insiders have hinted that it would have an electric motor powering the rear axle. We shall see just what happens. There is muttering here that it'll be a sort of e-axle at the back, so an electric motor on the rear axle that just kicks in when it's required, a bit like the Dacia Duster 4x4. In the meantime, everyone has been falling for the looks of it and loving it a long time, with good reason by the looks of it.
Yeah, I think the Panda's been the most successful of this. None of the ones based on this are ugly in any way.
Based on the same platform.
Same platform, the same sides as well. Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah, true.
But I think they have managed this particular sized vehicle better than perhaps some of the larger ones. It seems to have worked better.
Isn't that always the truth with like Fiat and Peugeot? Maybe not so much Citroën, but Fiat and Peugeot definitely. This is a good size for European manufacturers.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to take us into points of interest, and we have a lunchtime read. Now, you will note when you open this article that this is quite old, as in January 2024. But there is a reason why this has been put in here, because it might be old, but it is still a fantastic read. And not only that, there are some lovely pictures as well. And it is all to do with when Marcello Gandini was honoured at Italy's Politecnico di Torino, and he got an honorary degree for mechanical engineering. This is the transcript of his...
How it's taken this long, by the way. Why they waited until 2024. It's how it took Politecnico di Torino so long before deciding to make this award.
Yeah. but you get to see his full transcript, or you get to see a transcript of his speech, his acceptance speech. It's lovely to hear his history from him. It's also the people who helped him and inspired him. But not only that, it's his thoughts on design. And it feels very much like this was, if you were there, this would feel very inspiring with him delivering this speech. And also talking about how designers should use technology and in what ways, which becomes incredibly, monstrously important today as things are moving dramatically in development. But I just think it was a fantastic read. And like I say, there's some stunning photos and some cars that you get to see with people around them for context as well.
Yes, exactly. Especially some of the concepts there. Yeah, really good read, well spotted. This week's list of the week is the smallest cars ever made by every major car maker, where David Finlay asks, do good things come in small packages? Andrew.
Yes. Yes, they do. They also come in large packages as well when you stumble. It does say the smallest cars ever made. So when you check the link and you go through the slideshow, you will come across one brand and you'll go, hang on. Oh, the smallest they made.
Yes. Right. Yes. It does not necessarily mean small cars. Have you chosen something?
Yes, I have. The Suzuki, and I'm going to murder the pronunciation, the Suzuki Fronte, which is slide 21 on your pack. This is
18, 19, 20.
This is such a cute little thing. It's just after something else that's very similar that is not cute, that is slide 20. But this is much better resolved, in my opinion.
That's really unfair. Sorry, I'm going to defend slide 20 whenever you get to it, because I actually think it's incredibly cute.
Okay. Well, if you're freaked out about the T10 from Leap Motor, how you can sign that one off, I don't know. But the slide 21, the Suzuki Fronte, tiny little K car from back in the day, absolutely gorgeous, white walls, tiny tires. Nowadays, they'd be filled with enormous wheels to fill the wheel arches and everything, and it just looks great. It's so unthreatening. What a lovely little thing.
Oh, it's a little cuddly Pokemon of a car.
Yeah.
As is the predecessor.
How about you?
Well, I decided that I was going to choose a car that looks frankly offended as being on this list, which is the very last one, slide 32, which is the Renault Voiturette, which, when I saw the expression on its face given by its grille and its headlamps, it's just like, what do you mean I'm the smallest? I'm pretty sure I've seen one in real life. I think they might have one at the Schlumpf Museum and a Schlumpf collection, and it's quite a thing. It is tiny, and it just has the funniest expression.
It does look like it is a car that was designed to be in a kid's cartoon that would then have all the facial expressions, because headlamps would move up and down and wiggle around, and the mouth and all the rest of it. Yeah, it is.
I should point out it is from 1899. So it is very much.
Don't expect a steering wheel.
No, it has a steering tiller, etc. But it is also shorter than a Twizy.
That's impressive.
It's probably slower than a Twizy.
Oh, now is that a
car?
No, not that. No, because I'm ignoring the Citroen one for that reason. No, I'm just thinking, is that a road trip? Traveling in the smallest car we can. Actual car.
No.
No, because there's no way I want to attempt using a tiller.
No, well, no. I think the tiller is the least of your problems, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to driving vintage cars. Yeah, no, in a word.
A lovely list, though. There's a bunch of fabulous things in here.
There's a little bit of repetition, hesitation, and deviation, but it's a very nice, varied list from everything from the late 1800s up to you can go out and buy it today. Nice one, nice and varied. I like the ones that are varied.
Yep. The and finally, and we are linking to an Evo article. Again, this is from last year, but still think it's relevant, because it is discussing a book that is all about the secret BMWs that we never got to see, that helped bring the cars that we did get to see and could buy. And there is images and pictures and words from the author in this article about what happened and some of the best stories that the author, Steve Saxety, that he found in his investigation into all this. It could have been a lunchtime read, but also it does explain how if this does float your boat, you can go on and buy the book itself. But I love hearing stories about stuff that never made it, but also you get to hear, because it's very easy, I think particularly right now with BMW, to have it as quite a cold and unemotional giant entity.
Yeah, they seem to have fallen into that trap at the minute.
But you get to hear from the engineers who are talking about the passion and the desire and the exploration in stuff that we didn't get to see, but all helped to make stuff that came out and make some great cars as well in the past. I love hearing that there are humans behind these faceless corporations.
Oh, there are.
Particularly as we move in this social media world now and the way that marketing is done. I just love the idea of this.
Yeah, as do I. One of the things I think is really impressive here is, well, not all of them have always been secret. For example, the Gina concept. It was secret for a long, long time because it had such an influence on what was coming. It was very much internal. But, some of these they do still exist. That's one of them. I saw that on show once. There used to be, I don't think there still is, there used to be a BMW dealership in central Paris. And one time I was over and I was wandering around Paris late one evening, having looked at loads of cars. And actually the Gina was right at the front in the window with the sort of bonnet slit vaguely open.
Did you have to be escorted away because you weren't going to leave?
No, it was so amazing. Well, I didn't quite realise what it was at the time.
All right.
And it was closed, so I couldn't go in. It was in the window. And that's definitely a car that people should look up and be aware of. Just because of the way that the body is not. It looks metallic, but it's not. It is fabric. And as a result, the way it is and the way it works, you'll see that a lot of direct influence on production BMWs before production BMWs went all rabid beaver. Of the last 20 years, one of the most influential BMWs. And I think as a result, cars just generally for what cars look like these days.
Yeah. But I think it's also important as well, as there's been a lot of noise from BMW about how they're going to transform their designs again. And it's very much the newer Classe inspiration and how that appears to be bringing out a cleaner, more aesthetically pleasing and mature design language. I think it's important if we look back in the history, we can find perhaps some inspiration for that, some origins of that.
Just to clarify, when I said what cars look like, what I actually mean is how cars are surfaced the way they are and the panel surfacing. Should just clarify that, because obviously someone's going, but that's a two-seat sports car and they all look like five-door SUV coupes. And that's not the aspect of look like that I actually meant. Anyway, I think that's us for this week, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Have we kicked the news to death?
I think so.
Excellent. In which case, don't forget, between now and next week, you can give us any feedback and share your thoughts to the show at motoringpodcast.com on Blue Sky, at Motoring Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and on the contact page of www.motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon, and please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is if you search for Cracked Windscreen on Blue Sky, or I am under my name on LinkedIn if that is your preferred platform. And Alan, if people want to get in touch with you to shower you with thanks and praise for your work in simplifying the French daily life, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way to do that is to get in touch with me via Blue Sky, where I'm at AJP Bradley. That's Bradley.bsky.social. We'll be back soon, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.